Welcome to the Total Soccer Show. My name is Daryl Grove. I'm not joined by Taylor Rockwell today. I'm joined by a man whose professional career ended in Richmond. He tells me it's Justin Bryant. Justin, hello.
Hi, great to be here, Daryl.
So, Justin, you are the Director of Goalkeeping for women's soccer at North Carolina State. But you told me earlier, we had breakfast before we started recording the show, you told me your professional career ended here in Richmond. Can you tell me what happened?
Yeah, that was the USISL final in 1995. I doubt too many people will remember this, but the USL, as we currently know it today, started life, I think, as the USISL.
Yeah, the USISL.
The USISL. So I played for the Cocoa Expos in Florida. Richmond hosted the Final Four. We piled into a couple of vans with no air conditioning and drove up. And I don't remember who we beat on the Friday night. Might have been Des Moines Menace, somebody like that. And Richmond won their game, so we played the final on the Sunday, and we lost. And
3-1. I looked it up.
3-1. And that was the last game I ever played, at least for money. We had won all 22 or 23 games I'd played in goal that season. Missed a couple games through injury, but we'd won every game. But as we spoke over our breakfast, we had our pregame meal that day, an hour before the game at Arby's. So that gives
because they had the meats.
They had the meats. That gives people an idea of how pre-match planning has changed in the intervening decades.
So, is that part of why you were sort of like, I'm done?
A small part of it.
Yeah.
I was 28 years old at the time, and you just didn't make very, very much money playing at that level. And at some point, you do have professional adult responsibilities.
I see.
You have to make a living and all that. So I had struggled along in sort of the underbelly of the professional game for 7 or 8 years at that stage, and then there was lots of unprofessionalism in the old USISL. So there were situations where
did the players call it that, or have I just called it that?
We did not call it that. Yes,
you should have.
You have invented that. That is pretty good. We flew somewhere one time to play, and when we landed, the owner's credit card was declined by the rental car company.
Right.
And we had to sit there for 2 hours before we could find suitable arrangement to the Motel 6.
Right.
No offense to our friends at Motel 6. But
yeah, you're killing all potential sponsorships for the show here.
And there were weird scheduling things. To save money, we would go to Tampa to play the team in Tampa on a Friday night, and we'd play them again at 1 o'clock Saturday the next day. So there were about 2,000 people in the stand for the Friday night game, and then about 12 for the 1 o'clock Saturday game.
They're going to watch the rerun.
Yeah. And just it was to save money, and instead of making 2 trips out there, you'd make 1. And the same thing happened. We had teams come down to us and play twice in 2 or 3 days. So, yeah, you just get fed up at a certain point.
So since then, you've had what looks to me like this weird dual career path. You got an MFA. For people who don't know, that's like a master's in fine art for essentially creative writing, fiction type stuff, right? So you've been a writer. You published a book about your adventures in soccer, and just some regular fiction type stuff that's not soccer related, right? And then your other path is goalkeeper coach.
Yeah, it's funny because when I one of the reasons I stopped playing when I did is that I'd already begun to write.
Yeah.
I'd already published a few pieces of short fiction at that time, and I felt that obviously that was going to be more of a long-term future for me and something that I could do without needing my body to hold up.
Yeah.
So I was already sort of feeling that
You can put on all kinds of weight.
Yeah, I know.
Or injure your knee, and you can still write.
Right.
Yeah. Don't injure your hands, I guess.
Yeah, you do need the hands. So I got the MFA from New York University, and I lived in New York City for 7 or 8 years, and taught as an adjunct and wrote. But I missed coaching. I feel
like adjunct teaching is somewhat similar to maybe playing in playing in a nascent league.
There are so many parallels. There really are. My writing career has mirrored my playing career in that I achieved just enough to know what success looks like from close range without actually sort of getting it.
Right.
And I got back into coaching because I still can. Goalkeeper coaching is pretty physical. It's not, you don't sort of just stand there with your arms crossed running a session like outfield players coaches. We're physically involved in the training session. We do a lot of serving, a lot of shooting,
I see, yeah.
A lot of demonstrating, a lot of movement, challenging the goalkeepers. So it's kind of physical and kind of demanding, and it's not the kind of thing I can do forever.
Have you still got it, by the way? Like, do you still play?
I do
for fun, and are you still a formidable keeper?
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny the things that you lose and that you don't lose. You might think, and if I'm 52 years old, you might think that the reflexes slow down. I haven't found that. What slows down is the feet. But reflexes, occasionally someone will whack a volley at me from 6 yards and just stick a hand up and save it without any conscious thought, just a reflex action. So that's still there. I'm much more vulnerable if someone decides to have a pop from 30 yards and I've got all day to move my feet and get to it, but the feet just don't without regular...
Oh, you mean literally covering ground to get somewhere? I see, yeah.
Yeah, that slows down if you don't consciously train it.
Right.
And so some of the stuff we do with goalkeeper training, a lot of it involves coordinated actions with the feet, responding to commands from the brain fast as possible, really short, choppy steps, not jumping, not leaping around to try to get across your goal. And there's been no compelling reason for me to continue that level of training. So when I go in goal, I'm a little bit slow and a little bit vulnerable now from that kind of shot. Yeah.
Is that something that would happen to older keepers who are still professional? Like I'm thinking of, pro keepers who are maybe 41, 42.
Yep. One of the first things you notice if we could say a goalkeeper is declining from like the apex of their professional career, is you will see struggles with their footwork, and that manifests itself in bad balance. So you see goalkeepers with their weight back on their heels a lot, and that's because they're getting to their spot a little bit late, and they're not set, and they haven't really arrested their momentum, so they're just off balance a lot.
So would we see that with, say, I'm thinking of like really great goalkeepers who are now in their 40s, like Buffon or Tim Howard? Like, I don't know if you've seen much of those guys recently or not.
Yeah.
But like, is that a thing that you notice with either of those guys?
Not necessarily with Buffon, because he's so clean technically. It's the funny thing about Gigi, he went through a period. Anyone that remembers the 2012 Euros, he was struggling with
I remember him saving England penalty kicks.
Yes, he did do that. There were some signs then, and he was still only in his mid-30s, that he had begun to slow down a little bit. And whatever that looked like to me at the time didn't turn out to be any sort of terminal decline, because he's I would never argue that he's as good now as he once was. He once was the best goalkeeper in the world. But he's so good technically. He gets into such good positions. His judgment's so good, and then he's just very clean in his movements. He's a very controlled goalkeeper. That the drop-off for him, if you would say that there's a drop-off, is that things happen just that little bit less quickly now.
Right.
He had blinding reflexes at his very best, and they're maybe dulled just a tiny bit. Tim Howard, to some degree, I think. Yeah, and you would also say that he's not quite as good as he once was, although he's been better so far this early MLS season than he was at any point last season, I think. From what I've seen and from what the advanced metrics guys tell us, he's actually off to a better start this season than he has been.
That's good to hear. I mean, weirdly, I'm never thinking of him as like recall to the US men's national team, but I don't want him to have, because he's such a hero, right, to so many American fans, and to me as well. You don't want him to have like an embarrassing season.
No, you hate to see anybody go out where they're really a shadow of their former selves, and there may have been times last season when it sort of looked like that might be imminent, but he seems to have rebounded a little bit this season, which is good to see. I wonder sometimes with Tim if he just got a little too bulky in the upper body. He's a very, very strongly built guy. You
don't mean in terms of like necessarily like the bad kind of way? You mean
no, it's muscle.
Yeah,
it's muscle, but there's still too. You can still have too much of a good thing as a goalkeeper with upper body bulk in particular. You do need a degree of that to deal with the rigors of the modern game, challenges in the air, that kind of thing. But there's physics involved too, and if you look at the best modern goalkeepers now compared to when I played in the 90s, and there's so much more emphasis on playing the ball with your feet now that the goalkeepers tend to look more like outfield players, just a taller version. But you have De Gea, Ederson, Lloris, Ter Stegen. These are very lean, long-limbed guys, whereas in the 90s there was a physique type that you don't really see anymore. Do you remember Steve Ogrizovic, the Coventry goalkeeper? Yeah. You're never going to see a goalkeeper.
Big nose, right?
Yeah,
I remember him.
Neville Southall, Phil Parks in the old days. These guys that were great, big, bulky, strong goalkeepers, and their main objective was to withstand aerial bombardment and physical challenges and things.
I guess that's England in the 80s and 90s.
In the 80s and 90s, and the pass-back law changed that. And now, as we know, goalkeepers in a lot of cases are sort of an integral part of building out from the back, and you have to be a little bit of an athlete to do that, or a different kind of athlete, I should say. So.
Okay, so I want to move on to talk about like the men's national team goalkeeper picture, the women's national team goalkeeper picture with the Gold Cup and the Women's World Cup coming up. Before we move on, I just want to essentially plug your book for you. So if you want to hear about Justin's adventures, it is Small Time, A Life in the Football Wilderness. Where could people find that?
They can find it on Amazon. I wish they could find it at their local indie, but the publisher is Benny and Kearney in England.
Okay.
So here in the U.S., that's really the only way to get it.
Right, and we didn't get into it, but there was you did the American Goalkeeper thing. You kind of did the Jay Demerit version of the American Goalkeeper thing of just going to England to start a career, right? So
yeah,
the book is all about that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the short version is I had one contact in England with a non-league club, Bournemouth FC, and I flew over sometime in 1987 when American players weren't going to England, and I think I had $300 or $400 to my name. And I found a really friendly and receptive club there, and it actually became a little bit of a home over several seasons for me. Yeah.
All right. So, for that full story, Small Time, A Life in the Football Wilderness by Justin Bryant. But, so I really wanted to get into getting your take on the national team goalkeeper picture, especially because Taylor and I think, we can watch outfield players and have opinions. We can watch goalkeepers and have very limited opinions because we just don't know what's involved really. There's so many things that I think we don't know that we don't know, if that makes sense. So I guess let's start with the men's national team. We are in this situation where it was Tim Howard for so long. It was kind of Brad Gazan for a little bit, and now we're in a new era, right? Where it's maybe Zach Steffen, Sean Johnson, Jesse Gonzalez, Ethan Horvath. Maybe Bill Hameed. We don't quite know what's going on. I think I'd like to start with Zach Steffen because he seems like Greg Berhalter's first choice. When you watch Zach Steffen, what do you see that you like?
Just
start with the positives.
Start with the positives. Physically strong, quick, good hands.
What does good hands mean?
Good hands mean he doesn't drop clangers all the time.
I see.
His handling is clean, so
right.
He collects the ball safely and comfortably in most situations. High degree of athleticism, really exceptionally good at this early stage in his career dealing with penalties. I think he's saved an exceptionally high percentage of penalties. Not that that's penalties in the run of play or something you may go an entire season only facing a few, but it's a good sign. He's got good patience, which you need as a goalkeeper. It's a reactive position. People say, you have to be proactive, but still most of what a goalkeeper does is in reaction to what the opposition are doing. And again, for a relatively young player, his concentration levels seem pretty good. So I think he's got the highest upside, the highest potential ceiling should he develop to his maximum potential than any of the other guys whose names we've already mentioned. And
for those who don't know, he's with Columbus Crew right now. There's a move already planned to Manchester City in the summer, and then probably we assume some sort of loan somewhere in Europe next season.
That's where I think fans are getting distracted. So I'm already seeing people say, well, if he's going to go to City and not play, then he shouldn't really be the number one for the national team. And I guess my answer to that is it's very unlikely that he will go to City and not play.
He's going to not play for City.
Yeah,
he's going to play
for somebody else.
Yeah.
So, I think his contract period begins this summer. But more than likely he will simply be loaned back to the Crew.
Oh, I didn't think about that.
Or elsewhere.
Yeah.
Or elsewhere. And it's maybe not the Crew because the City the City ownership group, they already had people own various other clubs.
Yeah. Including one Sky Blue team in MLS.
Yes, yes, exactly. And another one in Australia. And then they have feeder club partnerships in Europe. And so he would more than likely end up somewhere where he will be playing.
Yeah.
If we do get into a situation where he's not, then you do get into that uncomfortable position where a clear number one for a national side isn't the number one at his club. And there have been national managers that aren't troubled by that, and they still play that goalkeeper as their number one in the national side.
Are there any successful examples of that?
I am trying to think of one. I don't know of a lot. It's pretty unusual because
I assume you need the sharpness, right? You need to be facing competitive action every week to be in the zone.
Yeah, you really do as a goalkeeper because the workload for a goalkeeper in the average game isn't that high. So if you're not getting that many games in the first place, and then in some of those games you may not be called upon to do a whole lot, you may not be at your very best should it come to a tournament situation where you play 4, 6, 7 games in a 3-4 week spell, 2-3 week spell in Gold Cup case. And it might not be the best way to replicate your best. So
what about things that Zach Steffen could improve upon?
Well, there's just a natural maturity and continued development that you'd like to see happen as he gets a little bit older. I would like to see some degree of improvisation from Zach from time to time. And one of the things we like about You talk about goalkeepers like De Gea and his foot saves, Keylor Navas when he was at his best for Madrid. We see it from Nick Rimando in MLS. Not always replicating textbook technique when the situation demands something a little bit different. So with deflected shots or when you're screened, you don't have vision, unsighted, things like that. Challenging players outside the box or playing with your feet outside the box and just having a little bit more of a freewheeling, improvisational attitude. I would say I would like to say that. I would like to see that as much as a fan as anything else. I'm not saying he has to develop that side of him to be a better goalkeeper. I would just like to see it.
I guess, when I think of keepers, like high-profile keepers like Manuel Neuer or Ederson at Man City, you really do think of them doing crazy, risky things. But that coming off, is that what you're talking about? Is that weird, just a big personality type thing?
Right, to a degree that. And what you're also talking about is something that we don't really see that much of from American goalkeepers, which is playing as an extra outfield player.
Yeah, okay.
Ederson is in a class by himself. I don't expect anybody else to quite replicate his combination of ball striking ability, passing range, and apparent lack of nerves. So the comfort he has in playing one-touch passes under pressure right on his own goal line to a defender that might only be 8 or 10 yards away from his goal, and he'll still play passes to those players. We're not going to see that from the current crop of American goalkeepers. That might be the kind of thing that Ederson inspires the 12-year-old goalkeepers of today to.
Yeah.
But the guys that are already
they're watching
pros,
NBC Sports
right,
and they're seeing that.
Right.
Yeah.
The guys that are in their 20s already are probably not going to change what got them there.
Well, speaking of goalkeepers playing with their feet under pressure, Sean Johnson had a rough weekend this past weekend against Minnesota. What do you think of Sean Johnson's game? Like, is that a moment that is that a symptom of a thing that you've ever seen with Sean Johnson, or is that just a one-off moment that we can write off as it just happened?
I would like to think it's just a one-off moment.
Okay, that's good. You're the second person to say that, so
I would like to think
about that.
He tried to take a touch with the outside of his foot a little bit casually across his body, which just as a goalkeeper coach, it looks cool. I understand why people want to do it. Use the inside of your foot.
But doesn't it slow you down? Like if you use the inside of his foot to just have a simple control, aren't you under more pressure? Or could he have still opened out with the inside of his foot?
Yeah, he could have still opened out. And if there's any degree of pressure, then you're not taking a touch anyway.
Yeah,
just
that makes sense.
Put your foot through it and clear it first time. But Is it about? I'm trying to get to this on a technical level. Is it about just surface area, like outside of the foot versus inside of the foot? Outside the foot surface area is a little bit smaller,
yeah?
And it also sort of provides a convenient ramp for the ball to just go up and over your foot, as it did in this case. When you use the inside of the foot,
like a BMX could just go up it. Yeah.
So, listen, it's the kind of thing he could do 1,000 times without that happening again. It's not because he tried to take the touch with the outside of his foot. There's something about when you touch, anyone that plays will know what I mean when I say this. You're just being a little bit casual Dan when you use the outside of your foot. And it's a little bit harder to take that extra precaution to make sure something like that doesn't happen.
Yeah. All right. What about the rest of Sean Johnson's game? What do you like about Sean Johnson's game, for example?
He's got a really fantastic wingspan. He's tall. But however tall he is, if he extends his arms fully right and left, he's got the wingspan of a goalkeeper that's probably 2 or 3 inches taller than him.
The obvious advantage being you can reach things.
More reach.
Yeah,
more reach without the disadvantage that comes with a really excessive height. So when you get into the guys that are 6'7",
and you're all sort of tough to get down.
Yeah, and maybe not quite as quick from point A to point B, moving around your box. He plays with a great deal of outward confidence and self-belief, which is always a good thing. And really just generally a good shot stopper.
Yeah. Anything that you'd like to see him work on? Because he's someone who maybe you could think of as a contender for the number 1 spot for the US men's national team.
Right.
But I have this weird feeling that I want to see him improve, but I couldn't say what I want Sean Johnson to improve on.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people would echo that, and it's probably been said for the last 5 or 6 years. It's a long time now that he's been one of the heir apparents.
Yeah.
And he was one of those before Zach Steffen came along, and I think we would all agree that Zach Steffen has eclipsed him. And so, yeah, you wonder, what is it he could do? He could be a little bit more sophisticated playing balls with his feet.
Okay.
He could be a little bit better link with his back four to help his teams keep possession and then also bypass when they're being high pressed, have the ability to clip those mid-range passes into crowded midfields and drop them into targets. That would add another element to his game that isn't really consistently there right now.
I guess the other name we have to talk about then is Ethan Horvath, who is, in a weird way, maybe the biggest mystery to a lot of people, because we see a lot of Stefan in MLS, we see a lot of Johnson in MLS. We don't see that much of Ethan Horvath because the Belgian league is not on TV.
Yeah, and that really is the reason. It's not on TV if it just so happened that it was. And people will be quick to say, the Belgian league, how good is it? Well, look at some of the names it's produced.
Yeah.
Some of the players at some of the biggest clubs in the world right now came from that league. And they are a Champions League club.
Yep.
He's got Champions League experience. Is his week-to-week environment as demanding as somebody in MLS is? I don't know. I don't know the relative quality of the Belgian league. I know that the travel's a lot easier.
Right.
But just being a Champions League club means he's playing for higher stakes. That they have that to play for every year to remain in the Champions League places.
Have you seen enough of him in action to have opinions about what he's good and bad at, or are you sort of stuck with the rest of us where there's just not enough footage?
I kind of am. I've seen enough of him to know that he's certainly good enough to be where he is, and he probably could end up getting a move to a bigger club.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, I think so. But I wouldn't want to claim any greater familiarity with him than that. I think he's got a pretty high ceiling.
Did you see him in the US-Chile game? I think Taylor and I noticed that maybe his kicking was a little haphazard. Maybe is the
it
word
was.
for it.
Yeah, it was. I don't think it's like that normally. I think that
this was like a bad night. Maybe
I think maybe he was just had maybe nerves a little bit that night. He sort of hacked at it kind of impatiently a few times. Yeah.
Okay, so maybe that's not... Because I've got the feeling that he wouldn't be at the level he's at. Even, whatever you think of the Belgian league, you wouldn't be playing in the Belgian league...
If you can't kick a ball.
If you couldn't kick the ball, because you'd just be too much of a liability,
exactly.
Right? There's no way you'd be a pro keeper even.
I think we give him the benefit of the doubt, yeah.
Who else deserves to be in this conversation? Jesse Gonzalez, maybe, because he was in the most recent camp?
Yeah, and I think what the biggest thing Jesse has going for him is his age. Mm-hmm. He's 23. So we talk about Bill Hameed and Sean Johnson. They're pushing 30.
Yeah.
And so,
It's crazy. I still think of him as the next generation of goalkeepers.
Well, that's because when we were in major tournaments and we were sort of safely and comfortably relying on Tim Howard with Brad Gazan there as backup too, we were thinking down the road. We were thinking that these were the guys we would hand the keys to at some point.
Yeah.
Obviously, we missed out on a World Cup, and everyone's gotten older.
Yeah.
And so now you've got guys like Zach Steffen, and now Jesse Gonzalez, who's 23. So that's a big plus for him. He's got so much time to develop still and add more to his game, which right now is full of all kinds of natural ability.
Okay.
There are elements of goalkeeping that do take time to develop. I think it's a myth, people that say goalkeepers don't reach their peak till they're 30. I think that's a myth, but there is some basis to the idea that it takes a little longer to develop as a goalkeeper because so much of it is decision-making and judgment.
Yeah.
And you don't get that without experience. It's very hard to just...
You tend not to get the benefit of the doubt of an early start, right? It's quite rare to have like a Donnarumma type situation where we'll just trust this 17-year-old in a way that maybe some teams would with a winger, for example.
You said the key word there, trust.
Yeah.
Most managers are risk-adverse, and if given the choice between a really talented 18-year-old and a possibly less talented but experienced and reliable 27-year-old, most of them will choose the latter. Yeah.
Can we do pro-con on Jesse Gonzalez then? What do you like when you see him?
I think that he actually the sort of exuberance and I don't want to say carelessness or recklessness, but confidence and improvisation. I see a little bit of that from him.
So a bit of personality, though.
Yeah, a little bit of swag. He chest out, chin up kind of thing. Uh-huh. And even if you don't feel it, that's as a coach and as teammates, you like to see that from your goalkeeper. Yeah. I like that. I don't see any great big red flags or drawbacks, except what you would expect from a 23-year-old, the occasional slightly rash need to insert themselves in a situation that's maybe best handled by defenders. Okay. That kind of thing.
So that's like just the flip side of the same coin, right? Of having that confidence, but then leads to sometimes overconfidence. Yeah.
Right. And one of the things the most confident goalkeepers in the world are good at doing is letting their defenders handle situations and just holding their line and staying back and letting a tackle come in first.
Yeah. So actually we talked over breakfast about a thing that I really want to talk about on the show here, which is that sort of the thing that we had Tim Howard for so long, and we maybe held on to him too long. So there's like this weird gap where now we're trying to deal with who's the guy, because we had the guy, then we lost the guy, and now we're not figuring it out. And you mentioned the idea that there seems to be this thing in the US where we think we just produce world-class keepers all the time, and that when Tim Howard retired, we just pick the next world-class keeper and we'd be fine. And you made the point to me over breakfast that maybe that's not the case. Maybe that's just a thing we tell ourselves, but isn't necessarily true.
Yeah, I think it goes back even further. I think we had a generation prior to Tim and Brad Gazan. We had Brad Friedel and Casey Keller.
Mm-hmm.
And then even before them, we had Tony Meola. So when you have an established number one, or for a little while, when we had Brad and Casey, we had two number ones fighting it out, which is a great situation. And you have them for so long, you can get comfortable, you can get complacent. And I think compounding that, we had several goalkeepers, American goalkeepers in the Premier League, which a lot of Americans see as the Premier League in the world and the highest level. And so there was a degree of self-satisfaction and complacency about American goalkeeping that came from the efforts of this handful of guys who did it themselves. They were technically products of the American system, but it wasn't like there was some defined American goalkeeping educational process that turned them into the goalkeepers they were, which would then, that kind of thing would guarantee a pipeline of more. It wasn't that. It was those guys taking it upon themselves to go to Europe and have a career. And the problem that they gave us, that sort of left us with a twofold problem. They were good enough that they sort of commanded the number one position for a very long time. So through all major qualifications, which we know can be very, very stressful and difficult in places in Central America, and then at major tournaments, we had the same guy for multiple cycles. And we don't have that now. And so then if you're asking, well, where is the next guy off the pipeline? Well, it turns out there wasn't one.
And maybe there wasn't even a pipeline.
There wasn't a pipeline in the first place. It was Casey Keller wanted to have a career. He wanted to make money. He wanted to play in games that mattered in front of big crowds and stadiums. So he went to Europe. Brad Friedel did the same thing. Marcus Hanneman was one of those. And then Tim Howard after that. And there was other guys, Jürgen Sommer.
Yeah, some of Jürgen Sommer.
Ian Foyer, guys like that. And as someone who's in the goalkeeper coaching community, I sort of saw this firsthand where people who should have known better saw those guys succeeding in Europe and just decided we must know how to coach goalkeepers. Mm-hmm. Instead of thinking, well, those are some outliers who are exceptionally driven and talented and had the opportunity and took the opportunity. And so I think the fact that we're now a little bit concerned about who's going to carry us through the next several major tournaments is testament to the fact that we never did really have an American goalkeeping pipeline. Yeah,
you also mentioned to me earlier the idea of an American goalkeeping style, and when you raised it, I was like, I can't think what that is. But then the other nations do have a goalkeeping style, right? Which I assume is the result of a coaching style.
Yeah,
is that a fair way to think of it?
That is, I think that's a very fair way to think about it. I think it's the only way to think about it.
Right.
We don't have. U.S. soccer doesn't currently have an established goalkeeping license protocol. I mean, for years, the NSCAA handled goalkeeper coaching in this country. Tony DiCicco, who was obviously a legend in the coaching ranks, was the head of the NSCAA, now United Soccer Coaches goalkeeper program. It offered a variety of licenses for coaches at all levels around the country. You start with the 3, then the 2, then the 1, then the Advanced National. And I think some people may know that there's a rift now between United Soccer Coaches coaching licenses and U.S. Soccer's.
My understanding is that you used to be able to do the United Soccer Coaches license, and then you can make a lateral move on the U.S. Soccer Coaching license ladder and keep going. And now they make you start from the bottom; they won't let you transfer essentially.
Yeah, pretty much.
Is that about it? Yeah.
Even before they have made that official, it wasn't really a lateral move. You still had to start a little lower than whatever level you'd gotten through the NSCAA. But they did recognize
like a slight southeastern move.
Yes, they did recognize its validity. and now they don't. And so now we're sort of scrambling to have, goalkeeper licensing through U.S. soccer.
Yeah.
And
hopefully they're working on it. Maybe they're putting something together.
I've actually been told that there is one.
Oh, that's good. Okay.
I've been told that there is one. If you go to the website right now and look at coaching licenses, you don't see it.
Okay.
But I'm told there is one.
So it's in the works, but not quite ready for you to click on it and take it. Yeah.
Right. It may just be something they don't advertise. I'm not sure, but...
So if there isn't an American goalkeeping style, but there is other national styles, could we quickly get into what is the German style, for example? What is there something that you think identifies German goalkeepers that's a result of their coaching system?
Yeah, I do. And also as a result of, and sort of, there's personalities. Yeah. Beyond just styles, there's personalities that are a result of what's expected of a goalkeeper there. So German goalkeepers tend to be brash, oversized personalities. I'm
picturing Manuel Neuer as you say that.
Yeah, but you can go back to Oliver Kahn before him, and Sepp Maier before him. People will say German goalkeepers punch the ball, and that is true. That used to be emphasized in German goalkeeping, is that it's risky to come and catch in traffic, and so just punch it clear. And so you see German goalkeepers can punch the ball to halfway sometimes. It's kind of amazing.
Yeah.
But they're much more
Makes you not want to fight them.
No, you wouldn't. They're much more well-rounded than that now. They're comfortable playing with their feet, but they tend to play a little bit closer to their line in shot-stopping situations. Somebody like Ter Stegen is very close to his line, giving himself the benefit of maximum reaction time.
Yeah.
Probably the most distinctive style nationally is Spanish.
Okay.
The Spanish goalkeeping style, because it's so strongly influenced by futsal. So if you're 30, you may have only known this one way that goalkeepers come and make 1v1 saves, this block, barrier, spread technique.
Yeah, like a Peter Schmeichel type
thing.
Yeah.
But that really started from futsal.
Okay.
And Spanish goalkeepers incorporated that into soccer. And so guys like Santi Canizares.
Oh, yeah, I remember him.
Yeah. And Casillas when he was young and first broke through with Madrid, and Pepe Reina brought it to the Premier League using this barrier block technique, which comes from futsal.
Does the De Gea thing count as well? Like, Tony and I had this was a long time ago, this is the Van Gaal era at Man United. We had this long, it started as kind of an argument and ended with us figuring out what it is that De Gea does, where he comes and makes himself big, that puts his one hand behind him but between his legs to block that gap, and uses the other hand at the same time, and almost makes a weird it's almost unfortunately it's kind of like a swastika type shape, but that has multiple angles to block the ball.
That's just his take on the futsal technique. But he's a good name to mention when you talk about the Spanish style, because you also see this improvisational you got there. What do you think of when you think of De Gea? You think of foot saves.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
He just naturally uses those as a part of his goalkeeping arsenal. And if you're old enough, you might remember Pat Jennings, former Arsenal and Spurs goalkeeper, who famously made a lot of foot saves in the 70s. But it didn't kick on from there.
Right.
And for the longest time, making saves with the feet was seen as a sort of almost a cheat. Almost that's what he's doing because he can't make proper saves.
That was my argument to Taylor. That De Gea's not making proper saves; he's going with his feet. Yeah. But I guess I shouldn't be arguing with someone who's the Manchester United goalkeeper.
Yeah, it seems to have worked out for him.
Yeah,
and the benefit of it is he's making the saves with his foot on shots that are shot down by his feet.
Yeah.
So his foot's already there, and he's just sticking it out and making a save. So
the reaction time is better, right?
Yes.
Because you don't have to get down to it. Your foot's already down there.
Well, and also you tend to propel the ball away from danger when you make a foot save, rather than a shot from an angle and you get your right hand out and you make a save with your palm. You sort of kill it right in front of goal. And if you've stuck your foot out instead, then you have a better chance of it clearing danger. But to
clarify, is that a De Gea thing or is that a Spanish style thing, or are they all part of the same thing?
You see a lot of it in Spanish goalkeepers.
Okay.
Yeah, you do. And Portuguese keepers. You see it with Rui Patricio and guys like that. So, and then bringing it back to the question of American goalkeeping, you just don't see that from the... If there isn't a style right now currently with American goalkeeper, it's functional and conservative. And those aren't bad things in the long run. That'll get the job done.
Yeah.
But I don't know that the ceiling is as high as when it includes a degree of improvisation and also a little bit more competency playing balls with the feet. I think you see it with one American goalkeeper, and you have for the last decade, and that's Nick Rimando.
Yeah.
But Nick was always, sort of third to Tim and Brad. And so he's gotten...
Fairly, do you think, or was that rough justice?
Probably fairly. I think there have been some seasons when he's been better than Brad Gazan. But we've been a little bit beholden to the idea that if a goalkeeper is playing at the top level in Europe, then he's going to be ahead of them.
I forgot Romando never left, did he?
Yeah, he didn't. And so, rightly or wrongly, fairly or unfairly, we've been beholden to the idea that goalkeeper is going to be higher in the pecking order. So, but, Nick plays with just I wouldn't say abandon, but a sort of joy-free, joyful confidence.
Yeah.
And
he looks like he's living it, right?
He's loving it. His distribution's great, and he improvises, and he makes all kind of saves, and it's great fun.
I know the solution then. So maybe because Nick Romando never left, he never made the big money, right? I know he's pretty well paid, but I don't think he's maybe never has to work again paid, right? So maybe what we need is Nick Romando retires soonish, I think. Isn't he retiring soon?
Fairly soon.
He establishes the goalkeeper license, and he is like the czar of goalkeeping for American soccer, and we have the Nick Romando style becomes the American soccer style. That's my long-term plan.
I've heard worse ideas.
Yeah.
Though. That's not bad.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
All right, we're gonna pressure Nick Romando into goalkeeper coaching. All right, so I should just ask you about Bill Hameed before we move on. He made those big claims of like, I'm better than those guys, I should be getting called up. Does he have a shout, or is there a reason he's not getting called up?
People reacted pretty viscerally to those comments by him, and there was a lot of talk, especially in the goalkeeper community, about he sort of violated the goalkeepers union.
Feels like a very German thing to do.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You remember the Ali Khan, Jens Lehmann feud. I don't mind him feeling that way at all.
Right.
And I don't even mind him saying it, because he should feel that way. It's a strange world if you...
But you should have confidence in
Yeah. So I don't mind him feeling that way. There might have been a slightly more diplomatic way that he could put that. I think the same thing working against Sean Johnson is working against Bill Hameed, in that he's pushing 30.
Right, okay.
And I'm not going to Google it. Someone could do that for me, but I don't know exactly how old he is, but he's not Jesse Gonzalez.
Yeah.
So if one of those guys were to suddenly take the reins and maybe get us through the next qualification cycle or two, and major tournament, should we qualify, we already need to start looking for his replacement.
Right.
It would be nice to have a crop of goalkeepers fighting for this position who could conceivably be doing it for a decade.
Yeah.
Germany has that. Italy has had that. Brazil has that. And a lot of the countries we aspire to be like, they have that. It would be good if we had that too.
So we're just going to have to hope that it's Stefan, Horvath, Gonzalez, somebody, Johnson. Yeah,
that would be nice.
Not Johnson, no, because I keep thinking he's young.
He's 29.
He's younger than you and I, right?
Yes, he is.
Hey, everybody. We're going to take a quick break to have a word from today's sponsors. And to do that, we have Daryl Grove in studio. Hello, Daryl.
Hello, I'm back.
You've shown up just for this ad read out of nowhere, and I appreciate it.
I'm back from the future?
Yes, something like that.
Or the other way around. I'm back from the past.
Something like that.
I'm in the future.
Either way, it's confusing, and it doesn't quite work, and maybe you're going to end up going on a date with your mom? It could be odd.
Let's hope not.
Let's hope not. Oh, we had a suggestion for
I'm wearing Calvin Klein's.
Oh, there we go. We had a suggestion for what we should call these little segments, correct?
Yeah, so our friend Dan Degnan emailed to say that because it's ad break, aqua break, it should be called a water break.
I mean, that works for me.
It's nice. I think, but the thing is, if someone's hearing it for the first time, we'd have to then explain it every time, because we'd be saying, hey, we're doing a water break. And people listening for the first time would be like, what?
I mean,
what are you guys
water breaks
about?
in soccer are things. So I think it could work that it's just like people will just assume like, oh, they're having a break to hydrate. And we do sometimes do that while recording. We stop to drink some water because we talk a lot.
I like to, when you're talking, just lean across off mic, have a little sip of my sparkling water.
The beauty of the mute button, my friends. The beauty of the mute button. But Daryl is with me today to talk about one of today's sponsors, BR Live, our old friends at BR Live.
So BR Live, obviously the games are on TNT. You can watch the games on TNT if you Champions League games if you have a cable subscription. But if you want to watch the games that weren't on the past couple of weeks, you would have needed a BR Live subscription to watch in English.
You
right?
would.
Yeah.
And if you're, say, a person who maybe is taking a couple hours off to watch at work, maybe you're like kind of got your phone set up in a way that maybe if your boss walks by the cube, they won't spot it, but you can still make sure you're kind of keeping an eye on the game. BR Live has got you covered for that one as well.
And honestly, let's be honest, TNT, they don't always know which is the big game, right?
No,
or which is the correct game to show. They showed Barcelona Man United last week. That game was over pretty fast.
How dare you?
Juve Ajax was the way to go.
Yes, it definitely was.
Right?
It definitely was. Yeah, but I guess, if you don't necessarily like trust your viewers to know which game to watch, then at least you, the viewer, can take charge with BR Live.
The good news is, going forward, starting with the semi-finals, it's one game a day.
Yep.
Right? So there's not a game that's only available on BR Live. They are all on TNT. But if you don't have TNT, or you don't have a DVR,
or you're at work,
and you want to watch there, a BR Live soccer subscription.
Or driving, put it right in the dashboard.
Do not do that.
Yeah.
We had an Uber driver who did that once, remember?
Yes.
It took me a long time to get from your place to my place because we took 7 wrong turns.
Yeah, he was watching a Turkish Super League game.
He was watching someone play against Braga.
He was watching Galatasaray play Braga.
Yeah,
is what it was.
It must have been Europa
right.
League. Also,
I feel like that's my fault because I brought up Turkish soccer and we got into it, and then I hopped out of the car and said, bye-bye, Daryl.
Thanks. I got home eventually.
Eventually.
Worth mentioning as well, BR Live is the only place that I'm aware of that you can watch the Europa League. It's not on TV.
Nope.
It's only on BR Live.
And that draw has happened. Some interesting ties there. And we'll leave it at that because I haven't looked at them. But I believe Chelsea did end up getting Eintracht Frankfurt.
You're going to make me Google it? All right, let's pull it up. Let's pull up Europa League semi-finals.
And while we say that, we can also say that it's the only place to watch the Scottish Premier League that I know of. There may be other places, but it's the most convenient one for sure.
You can watch Tim Weah and pray that he gets on.
He's playing against Hibs, I think, this weekend
right.
on Sunday. So you could check out if he gets minutes. If he gets a goal, he would do so on BR Live.
Here are Europa League semi-final draws.
What you got?
Arsenal-Valencia. First
Decent.
leg is Thursday, May the 2nd. Eintracht Frankfurt versus Chelsea. So Eintracht pulled it out.
They did.
Against Benfica.
They sure did.
Wow. Oh, I want to see more João Felix, but okay, all right.
Niko Kovac, maybe he's going to claim credit for that one. If Bayern win the title and then Eintracht Frankfurt do well, does he get credit for both?
Yes.
Okay.
You know what could happen here? If it's an Arsenal-Chelsea Europa League final and they're the 5th and 6th place teams in the Premier League.
Oh, boy. That's a spot in the Champions League right there.
And that takes maybe a 4th spot Champions League qualification away from someone. Things could get complicated.
Oh, boy.
I almost want Arsenal-Chelsea to win those semis just to set up the weird, confusing drama.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
That's what I have to say about that one.
Should we talk Champions League semis?
I think the only way that would happen, we probably should, but the only way that happens, I think, is if Spurs drop out of the top 4 but then win the Champions League, right? Because then it's if Spurs won the Champions League but weren't in the top 4, if Arsenal and Chelsea, one of them won it, the Europa League, but weren't in the top 4, then 4th place, which would, I think, have to be Manchester United at that point, would get bumped out.
Honestly, I don't know without looking at the table.
Permutations.
All right, what are our Champions League semi-final permutations and when are they happening?
Sure, we've got on April 30th, the final day of April, is Spurs v Ajax. That's on a Tuesday at 3 p.m. Then the Wednesday after, on May 1st, Barcelona v Liverpool. Then because the ties kind of do that weird inverted switch that makes Ole Gunnar Solskjaer angry.
Yep.
On Tuesday, May 7th, you've got Liverpool hosting Barcelona. Wednesday, May 8th, Ajax hosting Spurs.
So I was wrong when I thought they'd both be on the same day.
Yes.
Right? I'm very glad that I was wrong because this will be way more fun.
It would not have made sense for them to be on the same day.
Yeah. I mean, there's just obviously we'll do fuller previews when we get closer, but there's a lot to look forward to.
There certainly is
in those games,
and you can look forward to it by looking at BR Live. There we go.
So yeah, once again, it's you go to brlive.com, get yourself a soccer subscription, and you have access to all the soccer that is available there, live and then on demand afterwards as well. Don't worry about setting your DVR.
Don't worry about setting your DVR.
Definitely watch it at work. Let your productivity drop for 90 minutes or more.
I mean, I feel like
do all your work at halftime.
Global productivity drops for sure.
Everybody knows that when you're at work, you don't spend 8 hours working, right? You spend multiple hours doing various things, and then you just focus really hard and do 20 minutes good work. Do that at halftime, you'll be fine.
There we go. So thank you to BR Live for sponsoring today's episode. Mr. Grove, we've got another ad to get to, but first, we've got a question to get to.
Yeah, we do. It's from Graham Gilson. Graham asks us, who are your top current players that could become great coaches someday? This is a tough question because it's really hard to guess.
Yeah,
right?
Because, I mean, there have been, speaking as a Man United fan, there have been, I think, 7 different people who are definitely going to be the successor to Sir Alex Ferguson.
Yeah, Brian Robson, Roy Keane, all these guys.
Steve Bruce was definitely in there for a little bit of time. I think Ole Gunnar Solskjaer was in there, then out of there, then somehow back in there. So here we are. So I do think that, so you have to take some of what we're saying with a grain of salt because you never know for sure.
There's guesses, right?
But I do have some ideas that, I think it has to be a person who seems very focused on soccer right now as a player, that it is kind of their end-all, be-all. For example, we had Matt Herman on a while back. He was talking about
football?
Yeah, he was talking about how, Jerome Boateng, part of the reason why he's fallen out a little bit at Bayern Munich is because he's focused on, his fashion line and things outside of soccer. I don't think that you can, as a player, not be focused on soccer and then become a very good coach. It feels like you're going to move away from the game once you're done playing.
Yeah.
So, that's one of the things for me. I think you do have to have...
This is Taylor's criteria, right? Okay.
you do have to have a good bit of fame to sort of justify getting this gig and sort of quashing some of that speculation, like, ooh, is it qualified, or like, are they good enough for this one? But if you're big enough,
because like Jurgen Klopp wasn't a famous player, and yet he managed to work his way up the ranks.
Yeah, I guess I'm going with like because there's going to be those players who like we didn't know Jurgen Klopp. Even if we been covering the Bundesliga, we might not have known.
So
Jurgen
someone
Klopp.
we've never heard of. Yeah, okay, fair.
Yeah, and I think you have to have a connection to a club, right? You can't have like moved around every year and something like that. You have to have some way built in a bit of loyalty in there, and that could be Miguel Arteta not playing really for Man City, but moving there as a coach and now has that connection.
Yeah.
But I think that would allow him to take over potentially at Man City. So those are some of the things that led me to say that Sergio Ramos is absolutely going to try to be a manager when he's done playing.
Ooh, I'm not sure he'd be great at it.
I'm not sure he would be either. I have him as a bad manager, but I think he's definitely going to go for it.
Are there performance-enhancing drugs for managers?
Adderall, I guess. And I say like Sergio Ramos as opposed to say Cristiano Ronaldo or Lionel Messi because I do think that Messi's such a big star and has that level of like stardom and has had so many people following him that I think he kind of is probably just going to be like, no, I'm done.
Well, one of the criteria I went with is I think you need to be a man-manager type people person, leader type person, and I don't think that's Lionel Messi.
I don't think it is either, and I think
he's just so quiet and introverted that I think it's just not. It's not. It wouldn't be something he would enjoy to have to manage a group of 25 men.
I would agree.
Yeah?
And then I would say the same for Ronaldo, sort of, but like in a different way. That I think like we did see him kind of coaching Portugal in the Euro finals. Like when he was injured, he was there on the sidelines.
That's true. But that was more inspirational than tactical, right?
And
it was more him yelling, "Come on!"
That's where I am with it, and I think he's going to be kind of about branding and things like that once he's done playing. But I also think there's something to be said for if you're such a
unless
good
there's like
player.
an Arizona prison team that needs a coach.
Yeah, I mean, you know, depends on why they put you in the federal system. But I do think that there is something to be said for if you're so good. It can be difficult to be a coach because like kind of what we were talking about with Thierry Henry that there's that inclination to be like just do it the way I'm doing it. Why it's not so hard. It's like well it's kind of hard. You're pretty good. I think that can be a limiting
there's
obstacle.
A thing where someone like Thierry Henry doesn't understand why people can't do what he can do because he does it so effortlessly.
Yeah.
I've heard of a lot of stories of sportsmen like other athletes who just can't communicate what they do so well because they just don't know what. Like, someone like that, why are you so bad? Why can't you do it?
Yeah, just do it and be better at it. It's not that hard. So I've got a few that I think we'll end up seeing on the sidelines and I think could be good at it.
Okay.
The first one I've got is Giorgio Chiellini. I feel like Chiellini, because he's got the the academic background, he's clearly like
didn't he study economics or something?
Yeah. Like I think he's got that sort of the like mentality to sort of like ponder why does this formation work? Why doesn't that work? And sort of approach it that way from an almost philosophical academic standpoint, but obviously has the pedigree and experience to I think know how to organize defenses, lead teams, perform in high pressure situations. So I can also just see him wearing a well-tailored Italian suit on the sidelines for Juventus someday.
He's also got that Juve through and through thing.
Exactly.
It seems like he would get like a legacy pick almost.
Yeah, I feel like he's Juve and then Italian national team or Italian national team and then Juve. That's about what it's going to be. And then inevitably Chelsea.
My first pick is Vincent Kompany.
That's a solid pick.
Because he really has that aura of leadership.
Yep.
I think he chooses his words very carefully when you see him in an interview. So the man management stuff that I talked about with Messi, I think Vincent Kompany, it seems to kind of come naturally to him. He has that like natural moral authority I was talking about the other day.
Yep.
He's definitely a thinker, right? You can just really tell he's a smart guy. I also think working under Pep Guardiola seems to influence people a lot. I feel like he will have absorbed maybe tactical things from Guardiola. The thing we mentioned a couple of times with Grant Wall's book, Vincent Kompany was the centre-back that Grant Wall spoke to. And to hear him describe playing centre-back and how you do certain things, that just felt like someone who really can communicate, this is how you do it. Not just like, why can't you do it better? It's like, here's how you win a header. It's not about jumping. It's about finding the correct position, judging where the ball lands, and then holding that position, right? So a lot of stuff like that. Also, Vincent Kompany's career, stellar as it has been, it's been frustrated by injuries, right? Which makes me think he might be the type of person that is like, I got a lot out of soccer, not quite as much as if my knees had been a bit better. I want more, right?
Okay,
he won't need the money, but he might have the drive to sort of want to do more. But when I mentioned this to you off air, you said he's also made noises about wanting to be a politician.
I think that was like way back when because he has connections. Like I think his parents are immigrants from the Congo. I might be wrong, or his grandparents were, and I'm not sure they were like they may have been like forced labor. Like it was something where like I think he was looking at the immigration situation in Belgium.
Yeah.
By the way, that was not a euphemism for slavery. I think I actually saw it written as like forced laborers. But I think like I've heard him talk about immigration and kind of like cultural politics in Belgium and maybe wanting to be involved there. But that was many years ago. Maybe he has kind of turned his attention towards continuing his career in soccer.
Maybe he could do both.
Maybe he could. Maybe he could. We don't know. One who I feel like I don't know why. I don't know really anything about him from a personality standpoint or if he is this like student of the game who stays after to do tactics. I just have a feeling we're going to see Luka Modric on the sidelines for Croatia someday.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah. Because it's it has that feel of like he's just going to be there. He's the legendary player for like the team that made it to the World Cup final. I could see him wearing a suit trying to organize things.
Maybe
I don't know why it's all suits for me. That's what the biggest thing. No one's wearing tracksuits around
Whoever
here.
looks good in a suit, you think could be a coach.
Yes.
Yeah. I could see Modric actually like starting over in Croatia, maybe managing somewhere there.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Although he also has legal troubles, right? Didn't he have like a perjury thing going on?
Yeah, everyone's got legal troubles these days.
Okay, my next pick, I'm thinking on the Guardiola theme. Like, who is the new Guardiola?
Yep.
In terms of playing, Guardiola basically anointed Sergio Busquets, right, to play his role at Barcelona. And I don't know Busquets' personality.
That's what I held off saying Busquets for the exact same reason.
Yeah, but I think he at least sees the game the same way that Guardiola sees it. And I could see him maybe eventually being the Barcelona coach.
Yes.
In a similar style to how Pep Guardiola did it. I don't have any more to back it up than that.
That's fine.
Except that, like, next Pep is probably Sergio Busquets.
All right. I dig that one. Next Pep. And then I don't know, I guess maybe just because I just assume all Italians will inevitably enter coaching, I've also got Daniele De Rossi. I think that he feels like a future Roma coach. I don't see him managing anywhere else aside from Roma, except for maybe Italy, but then maybe he takes a job outside of Italy. But he's been there for so long. But from what we've read about him, from what we've heard about him, he is very involved in training. He's very involved in bringing young players through and making people feel like they're part of the club. He obviously is not shy about vocalizing his opinion if he doesn't think things are being done correctly at the club. So I think you don't just kind of step away from this club that you have such a relationship with. And then on top of that, Fernando Totti, that's not right. Francesco Totti is taking an even bigger role now that Monchi's gone.
Yeah.
So I have a feeling that like they've got that relationship. Maybe Totti takes more charge. Maybe Daniele De Rossi slides in as like the Roma academy director and then slowly moves up those ranks
Bring
from there.
in the old crew.
Yeah.
Well, my final pick is somewhat Roma related.
Okay.
Michael Bradley.
Okay.
Kind of following your father's footsteps. He kind of coached the US team in 2016. We saw him in the Copa America Centenario.
Little bit.
He and Jermaine Jones were sort of asking around about what maybe we should change the formation. Yeah. I could see Bradley deciding to follow it.
I didn't really think about Americans with this one. What about DeMarcus Beasley? I've got a few that like I wanted to ask your thoughts on. What do you think of DMB?
You can't be a coach until you stop playing.
Well, there it is.
He'll still be playing in the year 2500.
Player coach, Kenny Dalglish style. There we go. I'd be down for that.
Yes, DeMarcus Beasley as player coach. I'd be all in for that.
Yeah. A couple more than I wanted
Houston
to run by
Dynamo
you.
player coach maybe if Cabrera ever moves on.
I'd be down for that. A few for you to say yes or no to.
Oh.
Will Luis Suarez ever be a manager? And if so, would he be a good manager?
No and yes.
No, he won't be, but yes, he'd be a good manager?
Yeah.
Okay, fair. Here's one that I am now obsessed with, but I'm going to hold off on that one until the end. Will Virgil van Dijk be a good manager?
Oh, I think yes.
Well, will he be a manager? Would he be a good manager?
Yes and yes.
I agree.
He seems, in a weird way, similar to Vincent Kompany to
Agreed.
me. I think of him as like a cerebral centre-back.
Yep.
And I kind of just think centre-back smarts are real smarts,
Yeah.
and that's transferable. Yeah.
I also like the way he's able to, like, I've seen him a few times on Match of the Day being asked, like, how did you do this? Or what was the point here? Or why did you all move this? And he, like, very succinctly breaks down kind of tactical approaches and what they were trying to do without giving too much away, but at the same time makes clear what they were doing. And that level of nuance is a thing you have to be able to do as a manager. Like, kind of clearly explain what you're doing without telling the opponent everything that you're doing. So I'm with you on that one. My final one, because there are those
I'm on a weird pressure.
there are those managers who we never would have thought would have ended up being good managers because they were kind of volatile, a little bit confrontational when they were players, and that now suits them.
That's why I said Suarez might actually be good, but I don't think he'll do it.
So here's my question. I would say one of those players who I would have been surprised to find out was a very successful coach is Diego Simeone. If he moves on, could Diego Costa be a good manager?
Okay, here's the argument for Diego Costa. He is so good at trickery.
Yep.
And tempting people into doing things
This is
they
my
don't
thinking.
want to do.
This is my thinking.
He would be a great coach at, like, pulling a defensive team out of shape so he can counterattack them.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? He will goad you. He will goad opposition coaches into taking tactical risks, and then Diego Costa exploits them.
He also has enough weird blips. See, exactly.
I love it, yeah.
He also has enough weird blips in his career. Like, remember when he went to China? I think that.
He's got a sense of adventure.
He's got a sense of adventure, but also you've got to have the things in your career.
Remember when you just completely changed national teams?
Yeah,
there's a sense of adventure.
See that? Okay, great example right there. That you've got to have those moments, and I mean this kind of jokingly, but also a little bit sincerely. That you've got to have those moments that set you up for hypocrisy later. Like when he criticizes the player for leaving Atleti to go play in China and is I never would have done that. It's but you did do that. Or when somebody switches national teams and he doesn't think they should have and has a whole opinion about it, and then somebody gently reminds him that he did that too. You've got to have those kind of interesting moments in your career to allow you to be a colorful manager, which is what I think Diego Costa would be.
I feel like from all the picks, Vincent Kompany is the one I would back the most, but Diego Costa is the one I want to see the most.
Yeah, not together. I want to see them on the same touchline, but not managing the same team. That's what I want.
It would also be, I think Vincent Kompany is kind of cool, level-headed, not tempted into things. So Costa trying to tempt Vincent Kompany into some sort of tactical mistake, I think would be a wonderful game to watch.
If Diego Costa ends up managing a national team, is it Spain or Brazil?
Oh, neither. He'll switch again.
Well said, my friend. Well said. Hopefully, we've answered that question. I'm sure there's many.
I certainly tried my hardest.
I did too. I did too. Because again, I think. As an example, N'Golo Kante was one that I thought about for a while as being he brings all of those assets to the table and was a beloved figure in a French national team.
I think he's beloved for being quiet and
Exactly.
friendly.
That's
he's
the
not
downside.
like the take charge type guy. He's more just like everybody's friend kind of guy.
Yep,
right? Yeah.
exactly. So all of that factored into it. So there were lots of players considered. Those are the ones I came up with, but I welcome other people's suggestions as long as we've established the precedent. They don't begin with no blank, blank, blank.
Yeah.
In which case...
Actually, what I love is...
Apparently Daryl's policy is mute.
Oh, everybody gets blocked, yeah. So what I do... So the movies thing we talked about, what was the other reason that I was going to block everybody?
Teams that should have been in the Super League, I think.
Yes. And what we love on Twitter is make the case for someone else. Not just no something, question mark. The answer is no, they weren't in there. Right?
Yeah. And definitely begin it with, hey, idiots, no blank, question mark. That's perfect.
Make the case for someone else because that's more interesting. That's a conversation, right?
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
I like conversation versus being yelled at.
Yeah.
I don't know. That might be just me. I don't think it is.
Do you like ads?
I do like ads. Let's talk about today's sponsor, Hims, a wellness brand for men. They're a one-stop shop for hair loss, skincare, and sexual wellness for men.
So we've talked about them before, obviously, on the show because they're a long-time sponsor. One of the big things is the hair loss solution because 66% of men start to lose their hair by age 35.
And I want to say this, both Jurgen Klopp and Antonio Conte have talked about how they had hair transplants before they became managers. That's why Antonio Conte and Jurgen Klopp have such thick hair right now, but that's because they had to have transplants. If these players that we've talked about want to be coaches someday, but they want to be coaches with full heads of hair, then they can start dealing with that right now to ensure that they have that full head of hair down the road.
No transplants. Instead, you can use these medical-grade solutions to keep your hair.
That's right. And it's, again... backed by science. We're not talking snake oil pills, no gas station, counter supplements, prescription solutions, again, with science involved.
And these are the generic equivalents of what are like well-known brands, right? That's why you were able to get this for not that much money.
That's right. And it also means that you don't... A recurring theme that we've established on the Total Soccer Show now is my hesitation to make doctor's appointments and my lack of love for going in for those doctor's appointments.
You're not the only one, right? Yeah. That is a thing that nobody likes a doctor's appointment.
No. So you don't have those awkward in-person doctor's visits, long pharmacy lines, long waits in the waiting room. As Jerry Seinfeld said, there's no chance of not waiting. That's the name of the room. So 4Hims connects you with real doctors online, which could save you hours. It's completely confidential and discreet.
And listeners can get started with Hims complete hair kit for just $5 right now while supplies last and subject to doctor's approval because there's a bit of telemedicine involved. No waiting rooms. See the website for full details and safety information. This could cost hundreds if you went to the doctor or a pharmacy somewhere else. How do people get the $5 complete hair kit, Tyler?
They go to 4hims.com/total soccer. That's FORHIMS.com/total soccer. 4hims.com/total soccer.
All right, water break is over. I am fully hydrated.
Aqua complete. On with the show.
Also, we're talking women's national team. Women's World Cup is coming. There is a lot of concern about the goalkeeper situation because we did kind of the same thing with Hope Solo that we did with Tim Howard, right? She had the gloves for a long time. We didn't prepare the sort of next generation, and now the World Cup is coming. Are you concerned or are you confident?
I am concerned.
Okay.
I'm really concerned.
Okay. Tell me why.
I don't think our best goalkeepers are playing for the national team right now.
Wow. Okay, so the starter is Alyssa Naya.
Yeah.
The backup is Ashlyn Harris. You don't think they're the best two goalkeepers?
Well, they're certainly not the best two in NWSL.
Okay.
Anyone that watches the league, and certainly the people that do their best with Goalkeeper Analytics, will tell you they're not necessarily even close to the best.
Right.
I would love to see, I am glad to see Adriana Franch has been called into camps.
Yep. One cap, finally.
One cap, but, here we are 60-odd days out from the Women's World Cup. She's not going to play.
Right.
At least she's gotten herself into the argument, but
she might go, but she's not going to be the starting
keeper
when we
play.
get there. Yeah.
And then I think the criminally underrated Aubrey Bledsoe should be part of this conversation. She does nothing but perform at a high level for NWSL club. In the offseason, she goes and plays in Australia and wins a league title there. And I think she's a better shot stopper than either Nehar or Ashlyn Harris at this point.
So I have to confess, I don't watch enough NWSL to know anything about Bledsoe's game. What is it that she's so good at?
Well, I have a little bit of advantage in that she was at Wake Forest when I was since I've been at NC State. So I saw her in the college game.
I see.
You could see that she was a different level right then. She's sort of the perfect balance between a sort of more lightly built, lean goalkeeper who's really good at making saves, shot stopping, and reaction saves, but has enough substance about her frame that she can handle crosses and 1v1s and sort of the physical demands. And she's good with her feet. So
it's like a German keeper.
Yeah. Or she's like the best of what American keepers had been in previous generations.
Yeah.
So, and in fairness, I was a big Ashlyn Harris fan for a long time. I believe she's 33. I don't know that age is so old that it means you're not at your best anymore. I think that the situation in Orlando has been so bad for the last couple of seasons, since that it's had an effect on everybody.
And you mentioned earlier the infamous now press conference.
Yeah, the thing last week where she gave up what I thought were a couple of bad goals and then ripped her teammates in a press conference. I don't think what she was saying about her teammates wasn't unfounded. I just questioned the timing of it because
Yeah, you say that stuff after you've been the best player and you've got the authority to say everybody else let me down. Right?
And you know what? I have sympathy for because you're a very bad judge of how you played right after the game. You're clouded by emotion and there's a little bit of fatigue and you don't always know that you might remember a couple of saves you made and think you had a good game and then you see the goals back. I'm sure when she sees the second goal in that game, she would take some responsibility for it. So maybe the timing of those remarks wasn't the best.
Do you have a theory for why it took so long for Adriana Franch to get a call-up and a cap and why Bledsoe has, I assume, not been capped at all, right? Does she have a national team cap?
I don't think so. I do have a theory, and it's that the women's national team is a very different animal than our men's national team or any men's national team around the world. The players make the bulk of their income from the national team, rather than from their clubs. Mm-hmm. And even at their clubs,
and for the salary comes from US Soccer.
Right. I was going to say that even at the clubs, they are subsidized, through the federation. And as we I think just learned last week too, there were a lot of incentive deals in place that meant results in friendlies had a direct impact on their actual income. Right. Which is one reason there was some pushback against Jill Ellis bringing in new players. So the way it's set up, it's hard to take established players out of the team. Their income is based on being in the team.
I see.
And
so even for one friendly,
right?
If you miss like that win bonus and that incentive by not playing, and that's like money that's
a big part of your income.
Yeah,
yeah. And also, let's face it, U.S. Soccer markets the team based on the star players, based on the big names. They've been very successful with that. We have star names. We've got big names. We've got big players. And that's why you see players, their national team careers persisting pretty late into their career. Shannon Box playing to the age she played. Yeah. Ali Krieger being called back into the team. Some of the big names are Megan Rapinoe and Carly Lloyd are toward the tail end of their careers. There's really no chance a player of that stature would ever get replaced by, a really, really dynamic player who might be tearing it up in NWSL but doesn't have the name recognition yet.
Right. I would defend Rapinoe in recent performances.
Oh, she's been fantastic.
100% still got it.
No, it's amazing because 2 years ago, it looked like she didn't.
Yeah.
And she has brought it back from the brink and maybe better than she's ever been. So I mention her only because the fact is she is.
Yeah, because she's
towards
star
the
name
end.
established.
Yeah,
towards the end,
yeah. So it's tough. It's tough to bleed new names into our national team on the women's side because of the way it's structured. It's its own business entity.
Yeah. So it's almost like it becomes a semi-closed shop, or like a union thing, right? Where you got to be in the union to
and I
get the job.
I just don't. I think Franch and certainly Bledsoe have just not been seen as needed.
Yeah.
We had Hope Solo for so long. She was among the very best in the women's game. And there wasn't any need to sort of bring in younger goalkeepers then. And then her national team career ended much differently than I think anyone would have predicted 5 or 6 years ago. And it was the right time for Alyson Ahar and Ashlyn Harris to sort of step in. But at the same time that they've done that, they haven't actually played as well for their clubs as they once did. Nothing would make me happier if they were at their best form than they're experienced and they're worthy to be in that position. I'm concerned because you look around the rest of the world, England, Japan, Germany, Brazil, they've got better goalkeepers right now in their national teams.
So do you think it's a fair guess? I'm not basing this on anything, but I'm kind of making this assumption that Alyssa and I are through the World Cup, right? Ashlyn Harris is the backup. I've got this feeling that, again, it's not based on anything, but however the World Cup goes, huge triumph, win the World Cup. Maybe don't win the World Cup, I guess, is the failure, right? Because we expect to win it in a weird way, like with that nation. That maybe there's a refresh after the World Cup, and that's when maybe things get restructured, and then it's maybe Franch and Bledsoe and some of the keepers come through.
That could happen. I think that would be difficult if we do win it.
Oh, because then they're more famous.
Yeah. I think.
Because then Alyssa and I is in a ticker tape parade, right? Yeah.
Right. And
she's on the Tonight Show.
Yeah, and look, if that happens, great. She will have earned it. If we get the results.
And then the Olympics is coming, right?
And the Olympics coming too. So, I think it would be hard to see any sort of change happen. I think, to be honest, it would have to take a real disaster. Not get out of the group stage or get beat in, say, the first knockout round by Belgium or somebody that we're supposed to be much better than.
Yeah.
It would take something like that, I think, for that sort of shakeup that you're talking about. I don't think that sort of shakeup is unwelcome, but I don't think we're likely to see it.
Or maybe, as with Hope Solo, it could be after the following Olympics. Right?
Yeah, but
so after 2020, it's like a year since, even if it's like a glorious World Cup success,
sure.
A year later, maybe
it could
then
be.
Is the time.
But remember, the only reason it happened with Hope was because of the stuff that happened external to the game. She would still be in this conversation.
Right.
Very, very possibly had the things not happen. So it's hard. They make it difficult to make changes. Because of the salaries, the way the salaries are structured and all that, once you're established in the national team, you tend to stay.
So that's why we are where we are.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, fingers crossed for this summer. Are you good on time? We have, I think, many Twitter questions.
Yeah, there's some good
ones.
Okay?
Yeah. I count maybe 17. All right, these are going to end up in reverse chronological order. I've got them on my phone here. I've done this before. We did this before with the Cooligans. For some reason, our timelines may not match. So don't be surprised if my timeline scrolling through my phone with the questions doesn't match.
Sure.
Yours. Okay. So first question I see is from Ira Jersey, who actually was in this very studio just 2 days ago. Ira asks, in developing young goalkeepers, what mix of field versus inside the 18 time is optimal? I guess this is like how much with the feet outside the box and how much of the actual keeping the goalkeeping.
Yeah, that's a really good question, Ira. It's a mix, and so it's about finding that right mix. So young goalkeepers need repetition of technique in goal, making saves. They have to understand how to catch a ball, how to make a simple little collapse dive, how to make a front smother, that kind of thing. So you do that in isolation, but they absolutely need to be playing in game situations with their teammates, the ball at their feet, being pressured.
Do you mean in-game situations like play them outfield? Or
no, not necessarily
in-game
that.
situations where they get challenged?
Yes. Yeah. Game situations they get challenged. So like the old model was always like the goalkeeping coach and the goalkeepers standing off on their own and just doing drills.
Yeah.
And I think that we all are in pretty solid agreement that that's not really the best way to develop goalkeepers anymore. We have that element because we need to train technique in isolation to make sure the technique is there. But once we've got that, then it's about getting them involved in game-like situations where they have to make decisions on the fly. And if I was speaking, talking about outside the box in terms of like
Memoir Noir type situations?
Yeah. you just have to put them in those actual situations in training.
There's not really a drill for that so much as it happens when you have the games in training. Right?
Yeah, you need the players. You need outfield players to replicate that. Yeah.
There we go. Yeah. Okay, that's okay. We've got 2 questions from one person. We're going to give them the benefit of the doubt and ask both. It's DM, not _Rossi. What's your advice to a field player who has to play keeper in a pinch, a la Mike McGee once did?
Yeah, and go on YouTube and put in like field player in goal, and you'll see lots of examples of it. My advice would be use your field player abilities. So make yourself available for back passes and try to control the game that way. The better your team keeps the ball, the less goalkeeping stuff you'll have to do.
So play to your strengths.
Yeah. And then when it comes to the actual goalkeeping stuff, when your team is being attacked, stay on your line. Just
don't come for crosses.
Don't. Yeah.
Because you're not getting them.
You're not getting them. You don't know what you're doing. Don't insert yourself into the game. Stay close to your line and just try to keep the ball out of the goal any way you can. Stick a foot out. Yeah. Whatever.
My suggestion would be as well, again, correct me if I'm wrong, but my suggestion would be, or my instinct would be, I would tell my centre-backs as well, hey, I'm not coming for crosses. And so then they know that that's not happening, so they know to deal with it themselves.
They tend to know that, and if you watch those clips on YouTube where a field player has to go in goal, the intensity of defending goes way up. Everybody really wants to help prevent shots in that situation. Yeah.
All right, next question from DM is, what other stats or analysis do you wish commentators did more? Example, reaction time from shot to save or expected saves. I don't know if those are real stats that exist or not.
Yeah, they are. There's a growing field. Obviously, we know that analytics has exploded in recent years and everything, and there are some people trying to come up with good goalkeeper analytics. It's a difficult thing to quantify. You can't use save percentage like they do in hockey because in hockey, goalies get 20, 30, 40 shots a game.
Yeah.
Over the course of the season, there's thousands of shots, and so save percentage gives a pretty fair overall picture of their ability. And in soccer, we just don't get that many shots. And there are too many variables to those shots.
Yeah.
Spin and velocity, pace, weather conditions, etc. So analytics haven't quite caught up with it yet. What do I wish commentators could add? The reaction time is not a bad one because all you have to do is see where the ball was struck from and then when it was saved or when it hit the net and do the math. And
is it literally someone times it? And
yeah, you could just say, well, you had like 0.4 of a second to react there.
Yeah, that's never in TV commentary. No, I'd love to hear that stuff.
Yeah, that'd be an interesting one. In general, what I'd like to see from commentators is just get away from the myths.
Right.
So like the idea that it's always wrong or a mistake if the goalkeeper gets beat at his or her near post, that is a myth.
Oh, really? Okay, yeah. I buy into that. Every time I see Roman Berkey get beat at the near post, I think, oh, Roman Berkey again. So why is it a myth?
Well, it's a myth because unless the shot comes from a very tight angle, it may beat the goalkeeper at the near post. And so if there's a mistake there, it's got nothing to do with the near post. It's just that the ball was relatively close to them. So if you were to, say, get beat at your near post, the ball is a yard from you and it goes in. If it's that same yard to your left, to the far post, it's the same mistake.
Okay.
I'm not saying it's not necessarily a mistake. It's just not relative to the near post. It's that the ball was close to you. I
see.
So the other thing, when it really is a myth, is when it's not really actually the near post, and so it's not very acute angle. So it's out. It's not dead center, but it's just off to the side a little bit.
I see.
And then they get beat to that side. Well, the goal's 24 feet wide. The only way to ensure you never get beat to the near post is to go stand on the near post.
Right.
In the long run, I promise you that will allow a lot more goals.
Right. If you just stand on one post.
Yeah. So
I can see that not working.
So this reflexive blame that's assigned to the goalkeeper as soon as we see it going in at the near post.
Yeah.
Just analyze it for 1/2 second longer and see. The other thing is if it's from close range. In the crazy Champions League game back on, was it Wednesday, the Spurs City game, the goal Aguero scored, people blamed Lloris for getting beat at his near post, but he just absolutely smashed that.
Yeah, and he shapes like he was going far post and I think he used the outside of his foot. So that's a great bit of disguise, right?
Accidentally.
Oh, you think? Okay.
Yeah. He cut across it and he hit it so hard. Pace is always going to beat you.
Yeah.
It's sort of like blaming a batter in baseball for missing a 99-mile-an-hour fastball. Like, sometimes you just can't catch up. So
right.
I'm not saying it's never the goalkeeper's fault, but it's definitely not always the goalkeeper's fault when they're beat at the near post.
Next question is from Andrew Bressi. how do you keep the backline organised if the crowd is so loud they struggle to hear you? And there was a reply to this from Madonna Kemp who says, I totally need the answer to this one for my class assignment.
Yeah,
so,
I saw that.
No pressure, but Madonna's counting on you here. So how do you keep the backline organised, so talking to your backline, if the crowd is so loud they struggle to hear you? Which I'm guessing is maybe not a problem you had playing for the Expos against the Kickers in 95.
Nope. No, there was a good crowd that day. The place was just about full, but at below the very elite level, that's the crowd problem. It's not normally crowd noise is not normally a big issue. I don't think it's that big of an issue actually, even at the highest level, because
even like 80,000 people.
Yeah, because you're still closer. The goalkeeper's still just there 10, 12, depending on where the center backs are. That generally they'll still be able to hear you. It's going to be more of a challenge. What you also hope is that you've done enough work on the training ground that everybody sort of knows their responsibilities. Your organizational responsibilities during a match are you're making sure specific runs are picked up, off the ball movement is accounted for, and then you are taking charge of the ball you might be coming for and making sure everybody knows that. I think you can still, in most cases, just by screaming at the top of your lungs, I think you can still make yourself heard. I think it's probably a bigger problem in old style grounds where the terraces came right up to the back of the goal.
Yeah. Now there's some distance, right? So there really is a barrier around the field.
Yeah.
And so you're closer to your defenders than you are to the fans.
Yes.
So you can still get there.
Yeah. But it's a good question because I'm not disputing the idea that it's a problem. You have to work harder and try to stay a little more connected to your back line and make sure that they can hear you.
And hopefully the goalkeeper and obviously the defenders are familiar with each other. They recognise the voice. I'm assuming that you can hear something faintly and you'll recognise what it is that they're saying because you've heard it repeated so many times.
That's a good
right?
point. Yeah.
So what are the type of things do you say to defenders? I'm really interested in this.
It's funny. I was sort of a complete sentences guy.
Okay.
When I watch games
now...
That's
because you ended up with the MFA, right?
Yeah. When I watch games now as a college coach and I'm recruiting or as as part of a development academy, you hear goalkeepers do a lot of single word commands: step, press, drop. And I tended to be a little bit wordy, and I would say, "Stand him up, Davey. That's good. Show him outside. You're doing good there, son. Well done, boy. Stand up." And I just sort of rambled a little bit, and I tried to sort of have a calm, encouraging tone. I sort of feel like goalkeepers have to treat defenders like puppies. They will respond to praise, and discipline, and if they're only going to
don't feed them more than twice a day.
Yeah, if they're only going to get yelled at, if your tone's always angry, then at some point, Peter Schmeichel was like that, but he was Peter Schmeichel, so he could get away with it.
Yeah,
I think Tim Howard was like that. Tim Howard was one for like a shot goes over the bar and he sprints out to the top of his 18 to yell, to point his finger at people's faces and scream. If you're not playing at that level, maybe you can't get away with that. And there's a degree of encouragement that goes a long way to get your defenders to play for you.
Yeah, I think I would have liked playing in front of you. I like information. Like I like, you need to step, you need to drop, or watch this guy's coming in from the right or whatever.
Yeah.
But I like the, hey, well done, good header, like good job. Like, just gives you that little boost, right?
And also it builds in a little bit of credit for you when you do drop a clanger.
You're like, oh, well, he was nice to me. So.
You spent 70 minutes complimenting people and then you make a terrible mistake. Maybe they'll forgive it.
Okay, Tom Ritz asks, what's with you guys? I think he means goalkeepers. What's with you guys? I used to take shots from U12 as I was helping coach and was terrified. Something's different about keepers.
He's right. And you know what's funny about that? That's a good question, Tom. I don't know. Because I am quite cowardly about most other things that have to do with sort of like physical conflict. So I would never stand in and try to hit a baseball pitch, a fastball. Mm-hmm. I would be thinking this is going to come directly at my head and kill me. And I've done other things where my prime concern is my physical safety and well-being. I zip-lined in the jungle once in Belize, and I was like, I'm terrified, and this is extremely ill-advised, and it's going to break, and I'm going to break a leg and all that.
So maybe it's a myth that goalkeepers just like don't care about getting hurt.
Yeah, but something happens.
Adrenaline junkies.
Something happens when you go in goal.
Yeah.
And you genuinely want to make saves. You genuinely want to get in the way and prevent a goal. And it's because no one else wants to do it. Mm. It's a very weird form of martyrism. Where you self-martyr, where you just want to be sacrificial.
Yeah.
And it doesn't even occur to me real time. Like I said, I'm 52, and I played in goal in a team this past summer indoor, which is a terrible idea. Nobody should play in goal in indoor soccer. You're just there to be shot at from very close range, and it just hits you, and you're struggling to protect yourself. But there's still some strange, difficult to define glory to it, and sometimes the more it hurts, the better. But I'm also very lucky. I never got hurt. I never got injured. And you're sitting here and you see me. I'm not the biggest guy, and I played in the English non-leagues in the 80s when it was virtually lawless.
Yeah.
You could do anything to anybody. I was always able to take care of myself pretty well. Maybe because I'm not the biggest guy. If you flip me when I go up for a cross and I land, I'm not. The bulk of my own body isn't going to injure me. But it's just something I never worried about. Getting injured or just getting hurt in the moment. A ball hitting you. It actually feels good.
So actually, you said you're not the biggest guy. I'm looking at your cross table. I mean, I assume you mean you're kind of lean, right? But how tall are you?
About 6'1".
6'1". Okay, so is that? I'm interested. I don't think anyone's asked this question. I am interested in this idea of, do goalkeepers need to be super tall? Right? Nick Romendo was under 6 foot, right?
Yeah.
But then other keepers are 6'4". So is 6'1" plenty?
It is plenty. Most managers probably want a little bit taller.
But should they, or is that them just relying on some weird sort of stereotype?
Well, I mean, there are some advantages. Obviously, you're a little better proportioned to deal with crosses.
Yeah.
And you've got a little bit longer reach. I mean, I think De Gea makes saves sometimes that nobody else would make because he's got such an amazing reach.
Right.
So some of the times when he twists acrobatically and gets his top hand up and makes a save with the very, very end of his fingertips, I mean, I don't like to – I'm a big fan of the shorter goalkeeper, but Kasper Schmeichel might not make that save. He just might not get there. But there's trade-offs with being exceptionally tall. And so the guys that are now up into the 6'7" range, like one of the things we've seen with Thibaut Courtois over the last few years –
Is he 6'7"?
Yeah.
Whoa.
He struggles a little bit with shots right between his feet,
right
between the legs, that are shot from a long enough range that you'd kind of expect him to be able to snap the feet together, and yet and sometimes he doesn't, and they go in. That's not going to happen to Ter Stegen. That's not going to happen to Nick Romando. John Bush, my buddy John Bush, people might remember from his days in MLS. He was 5'10".
Oh, wow.
Maybe he might claim 5'11" with the buzz cut. I don't know, but certainly not the tallest. So it has its advantages. It does. I think there's a sweet spot of 6'2", 6'3", where you're taller than the average outfield player.
Yeah.
You can handle the big center back that comes forward, but you're not so tall that you're a little bit ungainly and slow to get down.
All right. Plenty more questions to get to.
Yeah.
Thomas Wilson wants to know, what's the age that a goalkeeper should retire?
Part of me says you just never should be a goalkeeper. You should never start in the first place. But
if it's too late and you've already done it and you're in a professional career.
It's different for everybody. I mean, Edwin van der Sar was still a really effective goalkeeper past 40.
We talked about Buffon and Howard earlier, right?
Yeah. I think also some of it has to do with when you start. So like Casillas was in the first team. Buffon was in the first team at 17. And so you accumulate a great deal more mileage and wear and tear on the body. And maybe it's a little harder to go much past 40 if you start so young in the first team.
And yet they were both in the Champions League this year,
I know.
Right?
Yeah. Still playing and still...
Casillas only just went out, right? Is he the Porto keeper? So
yes.
He's only just,
he only just went out. Yeah. There is no one set age. It's going to depend on the goalkeeper. And I think it also depends on type of goalkeeper. So if you're a goalkeeper who relies on your speed... I'll give you an example, Hugo Lloris. It's hard for me to see Hugo Lloris playing at 44 because he's very fast. His first step off his line is really quick. That will probably be the very first thing to go.
And it'll be really noticeable. Maybe
Yeah, it'll have an effect on his game. Whereas Brad Friedel was kind of slow even at his best and played pretty close to his line, and so it wasn't that difficult for him to play into his 40s.
All right, Placido asks, how do you judge good versus bad distribution by a goalkeeper? I guess whether the pass gets there or not?
Yes. What was the intent of the ball?
Yeah.
And was it achieved? Was the objective achieved? Do you get it to a teammate? But also the ambition of the pass. If you're always just playing a 10-yard ball to your center back in space, you're going to have a 100% success rate. If you look at Ederson's analytics, he cuts out a lot of opposition players with the passes he plays. So
but his completion might be lower because they're risky.
It's more ambitious. So I would say a combination of those two things. what are you trying to accomplish and how often do you accomplish it?
Robert asks, how much does the sun factor when tracking a ball in the air when facing a free kick or a corner kick? Would wearing a cap or sunglasses help reduce brightness in a goalkeeper's sight?
Yeah, get on YouTube and watch games from the 80s and 90s. Goalkeepers did wear caps on sunny days.
I remember Walter Zenga for the Revolution.
Yeah. And Oliver Kahn used to wear a cap. And a cap helps. It can keep the sun out of your face. No one will do it now because you look stupid.
It's as simple as that.
And so they just don't do it. Michel Prudhomme, the Belgian keeper, applied to FIFA, asked FIFA if he could wear sunglasses in the 1990 World Cup, and they said no. Might have been 94, but it was definitely Michel Prudhomme.
Probably for safety reasons?
Yeah. Just say if you take a shot in the face, it could shatter the glasses, go into your eyes, go into someone else's eyes or something. So
what if you had like Edgar David style? I know he had them for like glaucoma type.
Yeah, exactly. So if you had a medical condition, maybe you could wear them. Sunglasses would help, yeah. But the simpler answer there is you just learn to deal with the sun in your face.
How do you learn? You just squint through it?
Training. Like you have to deal with it in training.
Oh, so will you do sessions with keepers where it's like we're going to punt this ball up and it's going to like block? It's going to go past the sun and you're going to have to try and get it.
No, but I don't do that intentionally. But for instance, at NC State, we train in the morning, train at 8 in the morning.
Yeah.
And the way our field is aligned, training field tends to be such that the rising sun is right in the goalkeeper's face, and so I don't change that. We could easily go to the other end, but my thinking on it is this will happen from time to time.
I see.
So. There's balls. The track of the ball is always going to be out of the sun. You just have to follow it when it gets into the sun.
Say that again.
So, like, obviously, when a cross comes in, if you lose it in the sun, at some point,
because you lose it when it's
lose it at its height.
Yeah. Okay.
So if you're doing it, if you're really tracking it from the moment it struck,
you
shouldn't lose it, even if momentarily.
Oh, I see.
You should.
You can understand what the arc is.
Yeah, and
so you can. Yeah.
and it's still there. You'll still see the faintest outline. You should still be able to find it.
Got it. Okay. Thank you for explaining that.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to just pretend I understood.
Good.
Okay. Sam Nelson asks, when watching goalkeepers play other than saves, how can you determine if a keeper is actually good versus being lucky?
Yeah, what a good question. Well, I would say luck evens out. So if he's only lucky or she's only lucky, it won't last.
All right, that's it, yeah.
If anyone is lucky for 7 years in a row, they're actually good. So luck doesn't last. You see the occasional lucky save, but for the most part, if the goalkeeper's making saves, they're good.
Got it. All right. Tim Betancourt asks, can you teach quick reflex saves? Or is it just an instinct that some keepers have which makes them better? Can you teach reflexes?
That's a great question. There's actually dispute about this in the sports science community.
Okay.
There are some people that think reflexes are hardwired. I actually tend to think that because I still have mine at 52.
You mentioned at the top of the show.
I said earlier that my feet have slowed down and other things aren't as good, but I will still get a full-blooded volley from 6 yards and my hand will just go up and put it over the bar somehow. And I don't do any specific training for that anymore. I do still train our goalkeepers. We do still do quick reaction saves and reflex training because there's no reason not to. Even if you can't improve them, that's something you have to be able to replicate in a game situation. So we put the goalkeepers in that situation. So you can certainly train them to have the optimum reaction, whether it's something they can get even faster at through your training. There's a little dispute about that.
So how do you train reflexes? Like, assuming that we just accept that it's maybe a little bit nature and a bit of nurture, like how do you actually work on it?
Two different things: shots from very close range and shots that change direction.
So how close is close range? 2 yards, 3 yards, 4 yards?
Yeah, maybe 4 or 5, and just as simple as like having service from the post, just a ball tossed out and then volleyed from that close.
Okay.
And then there's lots of tools you can use to cause deflections, and so there's companies that you can put mannequins in front of goal, you can put traffic cones in front of goal, you can actually put water bottles, full water bottles on the ground in the 6-yard box and shoot balls into that, and they'll take all kind of crazy.
Oh, that's
deflections.
interesting. Yeah.
They make balls that are unbalanced so that they bounce funny. So there's a lot of little tools.
What do you use?
I don't like to use a lot of tools and tricks. I don't like to use a lot of implements that physically won't be there when the goalkeeper goes to play on a Saturday.
I see.
So I would generally use other players, so the other goalkeepers, to screen the goalkeeper or deflect shots.
But you have someone stand there and you have to hit shots that are going to deflect off them. That's a short straw that you draw in practice, right?
Yeah.
For NC State.
They actually people like doing that, though. It's fun.
Oh, right. Okay. Okay, next one is from Mike Di Benedetto. It's a two-part question. How much of a benefit are keepers who are good in the air offensively? I'm assuming like attacking corners. Second part, if a keeper is good in the air offensively, why, when trailing, do managers only bring them up for the very last play of the game and not sooner, like on corner kicks and free kicks in the last 5 or 10 minutes? How much of a benefit are keepers who are good in the air offensively?
Not a lot. We don't head the ball a lot as goalkeepers, but I know what he means. He's talking about going forward in the last minute to win it. It's when goalkeepers go forward in the last minute and actually do score, it's not often actually a header.
Yeah.
Usually it's a crowded penalty box and the ball will ricochet around and drop to them and then they finish it. But you do see the header every now and then. You do see there are some headed goals.
My instinct is to say that possibly all the outfield players are better at finding space in the box and the technique of heading the ball than the goalkeeper, because they do that professionally and the goalkeeper keeps goal professionally.
Exactly.
Is that fair?
Yeah, I think the one thing the goalkeeper is going to have potentially to their advantage is they're going to be taller than many of the players. So there's the advantage. And then also there's one additional player potentially unmarked because you've got 11. The other side have 11, but the goalkeeper's not marking anybody.
Yeah.
The defending goalkeeper. So
that's the advantage, right? You
might be unmarked.
You're overloading as much as you can by sending the keeper forward. Yeah.
With zonal marking, that doesn't really matter anyway. But the reason they don't do it sooner is because you don't want to leave your own goal without a goalkeeper. Yeah.
That's why it's almost like the last play of the game or maybe the final couple minutes. If you do in the 80th minute at 1-0, you could really regret it, right? Because you could be 2-0 down in the 81st minute.
Yeah. Again, I understand it. I understand his question is why. Well, you're already losing. Why not try? But if you're only a goal down, give yourself the full 90 and change to get that equalizer rather than it's. No matter how good the goalkeeper is heading the ball, it's still a pretty low percentage that he's going to get on the end. I mean, the percentage of corners that are scored by professional outfield players is very low. It takes 10 or 12 or 14 corners to get a goal generally. So it's just not worth the risk, I'd say.
I think that feels like the correct answer to me. Philip Doucette asks, do you think the age of goalkeepers not needing mad foot skills is gone forever, or is the current valuing of goalkeepers who can play as like a third-tier pro centre-back a phase that will pass?
No, I think it is gone forever. I don't think there's any – I don't foresee any reason that teams would want to give up the advantage of having another player back there that can help circulate the ball and keep possession. There are going to still be goalkeepers that succeed that aren't Thibaut Courtois, nobody would say he's really especially adept with his feet and doesn't really take part in that sort of thing. But
so you can overcome it if you're exceptional in other areas.
You can overcome it, but I think it's always going to be now part of goalkeeping.
Yeah, that feels right. I think ever since the back pass rule, this was coming, right? Like maybe it took a while. Because like the next day, the goalkeepers suddenly weren't good with their feet.
No, they were terrible.
But it has slowly come in, right? Mike Horvath asks, so we talked about this a little bit, but what advice would you give to an undersized keeper?
Lots of speed and agility work, footwork, and then outfield player stuff so that you are a really good distributor of the ball. Those are the ways you mitigate any potential weakness, say, in aerial confrontations. And then, of course, train that, like train crosses, train to deal with balls in the air because you still have the advantage of using your hands.
Yes, it doesn't mean you can't come for balls just because you're not 6'5". Right?
I'm pretty sure right now if we had Virgil van Dijk come into the studio and say, touch on the wall with your forehead, how high you can get, I can get my hand higher than that. Yeah. So, still maximize the advantage you do have using your hands. Yeah.
I hope he would stay for an interview if he would.
That'd be nice. Well. Yeah. We'd kick me out of this chair in a hurry.
I would finish this interview.
Okay.
Yeah. We only have 3 more questions to go, so it's easy. And Angel MTZ asks, Angel MTZ asks, which... Excuse me?
Z.
Excuse me. I just watched the movie Lost City of Zed. That's why I think he's English, so he pronounces it that way. You know that you probably have experienced the problems of transatlantic translation, right? Angel asks, which 3 US men's national team goalkeepers would you take to the Gold Cup and who would be the starter? On the spot, who's it going to be?
I'm taking Zach Steffen. I'm taking Ethan Horvath, and I'm taking Jesse Gonzalez.
All right. Who's the starter? Is that the order?
Zach starts.
What? So
that's the order too. Yeah.
I guess any reasoning for that? Is Stefan just is he the candidate right now?
I think he's got the highest potential.
Okay.
The best ceiling. And is the Gold Cup our ultimate goal? Obviously, we'd like to win the Gold Cup, but we have greater ambitions than that. So get his teeth cut at international level in games that matter, but also aren't necessarily the end-all, be-all.
Yeah.
Ethan Horvath, because he's playing first-team games, playing Champions League games. He's the guy I would be most comfortable turning to second choice. And then you don't really ever need a third goalkeeper, so I'd want Jesse Gonzalez there for the experience.
Okay.
Just to be around the national team in games that matter, because he's only 23.
So is he not necessarily the third best keeper, but he's the best choice to be the third choice keeper?
If it was purely the third best keeper, then I would go for a more experienced guy like Bill Hameed or Sean Johnson.
Ooh, I'm going to put you on the spot with a question, because I think I've seen Greg Berhalter say we haven't called Brad Guzan into camp because we know what he can do, which suggests maybe that it may be that Brad Guzan is the first choice and he just hasn't been called in.
Right.
I'm not sure that's the case, but if Guzan was eligible for the Gold Cup, and let's say the goal was just to win it, right? We're not thinking about the future. We're just thinking it's been a rough couple of years. We need a trophy.
Right.
Would Brad Guzan come into your considerations?
He'd come into my considerations, yes. But would I pick him above Zach Steffen right now? He played in the last one, didn't he? And we didn't win it. I don't know that I would. I mean, he won a MLS Cup last year. I don't know. I'd like to think I'd be a rebel here and still go with Zach.
All right.
Maybe I would revert to sort of typical manager, risk averse.
Right.
And go with the tried and true.
Go with the older guy. Philip Gibson asks, where did the term sweeper keeper originate?
Well, I wonder if he means where did the term originate or where did the actual style originate. But
I think the term we don't have an answer, right? So maybe we should ask, where did the style originate?
Way longer ago than people think.
Okay. Not Manuel Neuer at the 2014 World Cup?
No. I mean, it goes back to Grosic, the Hungarian goalkeeper in the 50s for the great Hungary teams.
The Mighty Magyars?
The Mighty Magyars. He played behind his back line and came out and dealt with balls that were played over the top. Amadio.
I would never have guessed that far back. That's
Amadio
amazing.
Carrizo of River Plate, around the same time, was playing that way. Quite a few South American goalkeepers did it in the decades that followed, in the 50s and 60s and 70s. Then Ray Clements did it for Liverpool in the 70s. And England when he played for England, and he was very proactive about being off his line, coming out of his box and kicking balls away. Not they weren't interested in keeping possession necessarily the way they are today, but the idea was to eliminate balls played through that a striker could run onto. I did that. We all did that in the 80s. Everyone, when we started playing flat back fours, playing really high and trying to press the opposition, that meant you had to fill that space.
You don't want a massive gap in between. It's just there to be exploited.
Yeah.
Right?
So it's funny. I have the video of this. That if we think way back to the beginning of the show, and we talked about me playing my last game here in Richmond, I've got the video of that game, and it surprises me how modern that game is. It's 1995, but we played three at the back, and we're high pressing.
Yeah,
and I was 10, 12, 15 yards out of my box when we were in possession because I had to be, because if we lost it, there was that space for the ball to be played in behind, and I came running out like an idiot, kicking it away several times.
Final question I have is from Charles Houston. I did it like the street in New York. In a situation where Steffen isn't playing at Man City, but let's say Horvath is starting for Bruges, who is your starter for the US men's national team?
Well, I wouldn't start a goalkeeper who's not playing for their club. I don't think that situation will happen, because I don't think the plan is for him to go to Manchester City and then not play. I think he'll be loaned somewhere where he can play. But taking the question at face value, if that were to happen, I wouldn't want a goalkeeper who hasn't been playing for their club. Okay, so
assuming we don't think it's going to happen, but if Steffen's not playing, you just can't have him as your starting keeper.
Yeah, you can. Yeah. And actually, in that situation, that's when I'd be more likely to somebody like Brad Guzan in an emergency situation.
Tried and trusted?
Yeah.
Okay. Are there any goalkeeper things I haven't asked you about that you sort of wanted to talk about before we wrap up? We've got an hour and 15 minutes, by the way. I hope people have enjoyed this. It's been a good conversation.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I can talk about goalkeeping till the cows come home, whatever that saying means. It's a weird thing.
That'll get you into certain minor league games.
Yeah, it would. It's kind of an absurd thing that I've, for some reason, dedicated my entire life to. And it's really fun to talk about. And I'd also just a lot of it, there's a lot of room for opinion and interpretation in goalkeeping. There really is. So anything I say is I don't try to put myself as any kind of definitive expert on any of this. It just is something that I've been fortunate enough to be in professionally and as a job now for 30 odd years, apart from my little foray into academia there for a few years at NYU. And I'm glad people are interested. These were good questions that people sent in.
Yeah, I was pleasantly surprised.
Me too.
Yeah.
What? Not just the same old, who's better, Allison or Ederson? Those kind of questions there's not a lot of value to that. These are good questions.
Yeah, great. So thank you for coming in. I'm really glad you're in town and that we could do this. I'll give you the traditional thank you for taking the time to talk to me today.
You're welcome. My pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Listeners, there'll be more Total Soccer Show, of course, tomorrow.